What is up, guys? You are tuned into the Casual Wrestling Monday Night Raw post show. I am Nerdy D, and if you are listening, you are part of the CWC, and this is the show where we join together to ask and answer the biggest questions coming out of Monday Night Raw this week. But before we get to that, do me a little favor and tap the like button and share this episode. It only takes 2 seconds, and it lets YouTube know that you guys are listening, and it grows the Casual Wrestling Army as we continue to chip away at the IWC stronghold over online wrestling conversation. Not a lot of housekeeping this week. Casual Wrestling merch is on casualwrestling.com. Go ahead and check it out. There will be a couple new designs uploaded this week, so be on the lookout for that. Once again, kind of gave a quick rundown last week, but the Discord is set for maintenance this week. That will probably come around Thursday or Friday, so be on the lookout for that. Things will be changing. If you were once in the Discord and maybe you shied away because there was a little too much going on, it definitely will be condensed down into a wrestling-focused community. We're trying to bring together the feeling of like watching wrestling with your best friends. That's kind of the vibe we're going for. So we'll get rid of some of that other junk and we'll bring it together and make it strictly a wrestling focused community. So let's talk about Monday Night Raw. Let's talk about wrestling this week. This is kind of a special episode. I'm going to talk a little bit about NXT tonight and we're going to probably try to put the IWC back in their place, but overall, that was a good Monday Night Raw this week. It felt fresh. It definitely feels to me like Triple H is back in control of the steering wheel for creative. You can see and I hate this word. I absolutely hate this word, but this is the only word I can use to describe it. There's a synergy. There's this feeling of everything kind of just makes sense. And I think that I tend to confuse Vince McMahon's booking. I think that I fall into this weird rhythm where I go, I like Vince McMahon's booking, but I think it's actually that I like Triple H's booking. I just can't decide when one is being booked and the other is being booked. And I'm starting to see, I got the feelings of going back to when Triple H first took over and we kind of got that story-driven Monday Night Raw. We got the kind of behind-the-scenes looks with things kind of, you got to pay attention to what's going on. But it hit all the right beats this week. It did everything that you need to do to have a solid Monday Night Raw. Now, I told you guys, if you've been paying attention, I told you guys that premium live events, the way we used to see them, that's done. The premium live events aren't major resets anymore. That's not happening. They're not Title Fest anymore. They're just super shows that have a lot of fun matches, but we go to Monday Night Raw and the ball's still rolling. In fact, it's been fun to see this Triple H approach on Monday Night Raw of having title matches on almost every Monday Night Raw on a weekly basis. I mean, when's the last time we saw this many title matches take place on non-premium live events? It's been a long time. This week, we got the NXT Women's Championship match, and we got a tag team title match. Next week, we're already being teased for a tag team title match, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, an intercontinental title match between Bronson Reed and Gunther. So we're doing this on a weekly basis. This is the new style of booking, and this is the booking that I asked for that is more in the style of UFC, where on a weekly basis, we have something to look forward to. I also like that Triple H is doing more story-based booking, and that's leading to us kind of knowing what's coming on the next week. It got to a point where Raw was a crapshoot. There was no telling what was going to happen the next week on Monday Night Raw, and it feels like this week they kind of hit us with a rundown of like, here's what to expect next week, and you can only do that if you're sticking to stories. And so Raws coming out of premium live events, they typically can fall flat. They can typically feel like this big reset where, okay, now we've got to introduce a bunch of new stories, but that's not what's happening anymore. The ball just continued rolling. And I think if I'm just breaking down Monday Night Raw, some of the highlights for me this week were, we got a little bit of an evolution in the Drew McIntyre story. Now, I'll admit, he still seems to be walking that gray area in between heel and babyface, which is where I like him. That's where I want my Drew McIntyre. But it looks like we may be getting a tease of Drew McIntyre in the Judgment Day. And I can't say that I'm 100% against that. I got the vibes this week that there might be some talk in WWE with replacing Damian Priest with Drew McIntyre. I can't say I'm mad about it. I think that I called it pretty correctly. Damian Priest is going to kind of be on the outside looking in as far as the Judgment Day goes. I think there will begin to be some animosity. I think that it will be addressed. I think that, look, at some point, Damian Priest has got to leave the group and go on and be a star on his own. I think that it's the table has been set. Damian Priest has all the qualities to be a superstar. It's time for him to go. But how interesting would it be if you slid Drew McIntyre into that position? Something I never thought about, but a group that featured Rhea Ripley, Dominic Mysterio, Drew McIntyre, and Finn Balor, it could keep the Judgment Day fresh. You created a star in Damian Priest, and there's just a lot of angles that you could take that story. Now, that definitely kind of shits on my CM Punk theory. And that means, what if Drew McIntyre beats Seth Rollins at Crown Jewel and takes the World Heavyweight Championship into Judgment Day? That fucks up my CM Punk plans, but I'm going to pretend like that's not happening. But yeah, I thought that was a bright spot. I think more Drew McIntyre and more of this evolution of Drew McIntyre is definitely interesting and fun to watch. Now, there are certain guys in WWE. This goes without saying, but there are certain guys in WWE that are just rocks. They're just staples of Monday Night Raw. On a week in and week out basis, they're going to perform. And one of those guys, the guy I'm about to talk about, is Kofi Kingston. I don't think Kofi Kingston gets enough credit for how many times he goes out on Monday Night Raw and puts on solid matches with a plethora of different opponents. This week it was Ivar. And he's been doing this for so long. And I just wish, there's a part of me that wishes there was some kind of legacy title in WWE that these older wrestlers could fight for. Guys like Kofi Kingston, guys like The Miz, guys like Xavier Woods, guys that it seems like WWE's probably never going to get behind them again as far as major titles go. And they're probably not going to dedicate the time to put those mid-card titles that are kind of status raisers. I wish there was some kind of legacy title, a title that was kind of known as a workhorse, as kind of a reward for being that rock as far as SmackDown and Monday Night Raw go. And Kofi would be the guy I'd put in the front of the line. Kofi and Miz would be those two guys, followed by Xavier Woods. I can't foresee, if I try to look into the crystal ball of WWE, I don't foresee a situation where Kofi Kingston goes on to win another world championship. It sucks, but it's true, right? Same with The Miz. Unfortunately for Xavier Woods, I don't see the path for Xavier Woods to that title. Does he deserve it? Fuck yeah, he deserves it. I just don't see the path. With all the young talent coming up and all the current talent that exists, I can't see that path in the crystal ball. But if there was some kind of title, some kind of championship that existed for these guys that was kind of outside of the world title and outside of the mid-card title, I think it would be fun. Maybe something like a European championship would be interesting. I think you could get some play there, and it would be kind of a respect thing for these other guys. But I will tell you one thing. Talking about Kofi Kingston, the guy who needs to watch out right now is Ivar. Ivar has to be careful because his stock is rising so fast at this point, as far as I'm concerned. He might be a single superstar. Eric might come back, and there might not be a place for the Viking Raiders tag team. Ivar's pretty fun to watch in the ring. He's definitely athletic and gifted for a guy of that size. And speaking of a guy of that size, we got to talk about Bronson Reed. Bronson Reed versus Gunther is going to be an interesting Intercontinental Championship match next week. I mean, here's the thing. We've gotten spoiled. We've gotten used to Gunther working with these ricochets, these gables, these fast movers. What happens when we put Gunther in the ring with a big body like Bronson Reed? It's going to be a test for Gunther to see. I've been saying, just insert wrestler. Gunther will do his job. This will be interesting because I don't think I've seen this dynamic yet. But here's a question. Is Gunther allergic to premium live events? Because it seems like all of his title defenses come on Monday Night Raw. And I'm not mad about that because it absolutely makes Monday Night Raw feel special. It feels like the Intercontinental Championship is the main title for Monday Night Raw. And I saw a statistic that no title in the men's division has switched hands on Monday Night Raw in over 365 days. That's interesting. That is definitely long-term booking and long-term protection of a lot of guys. But, reality, I don't think Bronson Reed's the guy. I don't think Bronson Reed's going to be your next Intercontinental Champion. I think that we're still in holding for the story of Gable. This is WWE doing an awesome job of making it feel like Gable has to scratch, beg, claw, and just fight for everything until he finally comes full circle. And I don't know if I'm looking at premium live events, I don't know where it's going to be, but there's going to be, I think, this big epic moment where where Gunther finally kind of passes the torch to Chad Gable. And I think that's exciting. I think that's good booking. This is another just checkbox for Triple H actually kind of having an idea and sticking to the plan. And the last thing that I think, I found interesting on Monday Night Raw was the Super Friends. They broke up for a second. It looked like KO was going to turn heel. I got extremely excited. I thought, holy shit, this is my dream. KO's about to break away from the Super Friends, and we're going to get, an interesting version of KO because I miss Kevin Owens in a role that actually means something. Right now, he's an NPC. Right now, he's a side character. He's a side quest. And I think we as fans, especially as casual fans, we forget how good Kevin Owens can be. I forget that at one time, I was singing the praises as Kevin Owens being the best wrestler in WWE. That's promo, that's wrestling, that's everything. All encompassing, I still believe Kevin Owens can be that. I just think right now, he has found himself stuck in a story that he can't get out of. But if you just watch Kevin Owens, his facial expressions, the comments he makes under his breath, he is absolute gold. I don't know if anybody caught this. Did anybody see after they cut back from the Ludwig vignette? That was hilarious. Well done. Love these little vignettes that WWE's putting together. But they cut back and KO was looking at Sami Zayn and he literally mouthed, "What the hell was that?" And that was so in character. And that's such a small thing that makes me go, I remember why I love KO. I am counting down the days. In fact, I think I'm going to insert a calendar maybe on one side of the screen, maybe behind me, but I'm going to insert a calendar that counts the days until Kevin Owens turns heel and does something interesting again. Because I forget, and I don't want to forget, and I want to make sure that we recognize that when Kevin Owens finally flips that switch and becomes that guy again, we're in for another treat. Sometimes I feel like Kevin Owens is the Kanye West of the WWE. He's got me saying, like, I want that old KO. Fuck all this 2023 KO. I want that old KO. I want that old Kevin Owens fight. That's what I'm looking for. So speaking of the Super Friends, I got to thinking this week. I thought, let's do something different. Let's have fun. Let's look back into the crystal ball. Let's do some way too early predictions, if we could call it that. I want to talk about Survivor Series because we're coming up. We're about a month and some change away from Survivor Series. And I don't know, someone tell me, because I was trying to look this up before the show and I couldn't find it. It has not been confirmed that we're doing War Games again, right? Like that has not been confirmed. That may have been too costly. They may not see the benefit, but I have not seen confirmation that Survivor Series this year is yet again going to be War Games. So I think that'll be interesting to see. But I wanted to take the time to try to, in the most nerdy way possible, pre-book Survivor Series and see where I end up as far as who I think will be in the ring. So at the end of Monday Night Raw, the Super Friends reunited. To my angst, to my disappointment, Kevin Owens shook hands with Jey Uso, and now the Super Friends are stronger than they've ever been. And that's a bitter moment for me, and I'm still hoping, KO spazzes out at some point and goes full heel on Jey Uso. Think it's coming. I still think it's coming. Maybe it's after Survivor Series. But let's look at this from the most realistic point of view, heading into Crown Jewel and then out towards Survivor Series. Each team gets 5 guys. That's what I know. I know that. I believe that. You guys tell me if I'm wrong. But let's assume WWE. Let's play a couple different scenarios out here. Let's say they want Roman Reigns in this match. You could go Roman, Solo, and Jimmy, right? And on the other side, let's do the Super Friends. Cody, Sammy, KO, and Jay. I think that works. I'm not mad, but I think there's a few spots and a few holes that are going to be hard to fill if you go with that combination. So I'm going to assume, for the Nerdy D's sake, I'm going to assume Roman's not in this match. Roman's not doing War Games or Survivor Series again. And I'm instead going to combine the Bloodline with the Judgment Day. And I'm going to say, more than likely, the heel side of Survivor Series is going to be Solo Sikoa, Jimmy Uso, Dominic Mysterio, Finn Balor, and Damian Priest. I like that. I think that works. On the babyface side, then you can go the Super Friends, Cody, Sammy, KO, Jay. And I think that LA Knight slides in there nicely, especially given that more than likely, I think at Crown Jewel, we're going to get LA Knight versus Roman Reigns. It won't be a clean finish. LA Knight will get somehow fucked out of that match and will continue to pursue an opportunity against Roman Reigns, which in some way will get him drug into the Survivor Series feud with the Bloodline. So, look at that. Look at it and tell me what you think. Solo, Jimmy, Dominic, Finn, and Damian versus Cody, Sammy, KO, Jay, and LA Knight. Only problem here is, does that leave enough firepower for the rest of that card? Because you can't use everybody. There's got to be enough. Let's assume they try to do 5 matches. Let's assume Triple H liked the 5 matches from Fastlane. It gave everybody time to breathe. And let's say you could do Seth Rollins versus Drew McIntyre Part 2. I think that works. You have a women's War Games match. You could do Gunther versus Gable, which I think works. You could do Santos versus Rey Mysterio. So I think, I'm not saying that, by no means are those my predictions for what's happening, but I guess I'm saying there's enough talent left to fill out the card if you put the Bloodline and the Judgment Day together and then the Super Friends on the other side of that. You can still fill the rest of that card out. Now, my heart, deep down in my heart, I would love to see the Judgment Day take on the Bloodline in a War Games match. That's my ultimate dream. Let's go Roman Reigns, Jimmy Uso, Solo Sikoa. Let's throw Braun Breaker in there because of what happened tonight. And let's put Nia Jax in there. And let's call that the Bloodline side of the card. And then let's do Rhea Ripley, Dominic Mysterio, Finn Balor, Damian Priest, and JD McDonough. That's my dream match right there. I think that there's a part of me as a wrestling fan thinks we deserve to see the Judgment Day take on the Bloodline at least one time before they all crumble and dissipate. There's got to be a women's War Games match, right? And I think what bothers me is there's not even the beginning of anything that makes sense as far as like 2 teams forming against each other. I guess if you reach real far out, you could go, well, let's take the 4 women who were in the ring at the same time fighting each other, and let's do the thing where we put 4 people who don't like each other on a team, and you guys got to figure out how to get along. So let's do Rhea Ripley, Raquel Rodriguez, Nia Jax, Shayna Baszler. Insert a 5th. I don't know who the 5th is on that team. Then who do you put them against? Do you try to line them up over on the other side against like Becky Lynch, Tegan Nox, Natalya? Insert 2 more names. I'm wide open on the women's side of this. I actually don't know where they're going to go. I'm actually interested to hear you guys let me know what you think the Survivor Series matches are going to be this year. And let me know, do you think that they're going to be War Games, or are we just going straight up standard Survivor Series for Chicago? So I had a question. This is a question that was asked to me by a friend of mine. He asked me, has Triple H elevated the women's division in WWE, especially after the amount of time they got on Monday Night Raw this week? Now, I've always been a big believer that the biggest talent gap between WWE and AEW lives in the women's division. Now, I know that gets argued by the IWC all the time, but it's always been weird to me that WWE kind of falls into these slumps where they almost forget that they have this laundry list of talent. Raw is a 3-hour show. 3 hours. That's a lot of wrestling. That's too long for Monday Night Raw to just be a straight up sausage fest every week. Like, so, and I know the IWC, I can hear them already. They're going to jump into the comments and they're going to try and sell you the snake oil on how secretly the AEW women's division is the premier division. But don't let them use smoke and mirrors. Don't let them sell you that snake oil. That's not true. You go talent for talent, and it's absolutely not even close. And when Triple H gets to cooking like he did this Monday, the women's division in WWE stands in a position of its own. You look at SmackDown, I already think that SmackDown's been cooking, but now it looks like Triple H has the ingredients to make Monday Night Raw special. Look, you had Nia Jax versus Raquel. That was fun. You didn't even have to do disqualification in that match. That was just a fun match as it is. I think Nia Jax has come in and exceeded expectation. I think Raquel Rodriguez has stepped up and shown a new level to who she is, and it made both women look strong. Then you had the addition of Rhea Ripley coming out. You had the addition of Shayna Baszler coming out. And I got a question. Did we just see a women's match where all 4 women came out looking credible? Like, that has not been done a long time on Monday Night Raw. For the first time in a long time, it's starting to look like there's an actual division around Rhea Ripley. There's actually a group of women superstars that feel like they could be threats to the crown. Shayna Baszler is at her best when she's just being a badass, when she's not talking. Same booking that we talk about for Ronda Rousey. That's how you book Shayna Baszler. Just let her be a badass. It works for Shayna Baszler. It would have worked for Ronda Rousey. We can fix where we fucked up with Ronda by letting Shayna have that style of booking. Nia Jax has looked credible since she's come back. She's exceeded expectations, and I think she's being booked correctly as kind of the monster of the division that is, looking like it's a problem to take down. Raquel Rodriguez is finally looking comfortable in the ring to me as far as being a babyface and not feeling like she needs to smile all the time. Because I think that was the problem. I think someone told Raquel, you're a babyface and you've got to go make the kids happy. And that's not what being a babyface is. You just, you got to follow the rules. You got to do things the right way, but you don't have to overplay to the crowd. And it looks like she's getting more comfortable in that position. And then Rhea Ripley is Rhea Ripley. She's the cornerstone of the division. She is right now the top of the mountain as far as women's wrestling goes. And that's all on Monday Night Raw. That's not even talking about what you have on SmackDown. And that's not even mentioning the fact that you still have Becky Lynch, who is showing up on a weekly basis to defend the NXT championship on Raw against younger talent like Tegan Nox. I can talk about Becky Lynch all day. I can tell you that I think Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins have at some point become very stereotypical wrestlers to me. It's like they're reading the playbook of how to be a babyface in wrestling, and it gets on my nerves. But one thing that I can't say about Becky Lynch is when she gets in the ring, there's nobody better. As far as X's and O's go, as far as making her opponent look good, she is top of the line when it comes to that. So to see her give some of these younger talents an opportunity, looks like Xia Li may be next. This is fun. This is that, like, it looked like Trish Stratus might have done it for Becky, and now it looks like Becky's going to do it for some other people on the roster, and it only benefits everybody when you start creating new stars like Tegan Nox. I didn't have any interest in Tegan Nox 3 weeks ago. Now I'm interested, and you can thank Becky Lynch for that. So now you got Shayna, you've got Rhea, you've got Raquel, you've got Nia, you've got Becky, you've got Natty, you've got all these people. You got Maxine Dupree even, who's doing her thing as far as Alpha Academy goes. She may be a little more green and not ready to get in the mix, but at least she's getting spotlight and getting some residual kind of, love off of the Otis and Gable thing. And I think that's how it works. And it looks like we may even get a Natalya versus Piper storyline, which is actually going to give a little bit of purpose to Piper being Chelsea's partner. She actually stood up for her. So things are starting to look good. There's actually a lot of storytelling going on in the women's division, and that's only, I think, going to get better, and it's only going to make the division stronger as we move forward. All right, so last question of the week here is going to be a NXT question, because I did watch NXT tonight, just like everybody else probably did, and I want to ask the question, and I want to answer the question. WWE made a bold statement, and here's the question. Did WWE deliver on the promise that this was going to be the greatest NXT of all time? Now, I'm not going to claim that I've seen every NXT. I'm not even going to claim that I've seen more than, 2 handfuls of NXT, but I can answer this question. If it was, was it the best of all time? I don't know. You guys got to tell me. You guys probably watch Black and Gold NXT. I didn't watch much of it. I haven't watched much new NXT. I'll stick my toe in and I'll pull myself out. But I can do what I do best, and I can overreact to what I saw tonight and tell you that they definitely delivered the best wrestling show on Tuesday night. Shots fired at AEW, but I definitely believe that I can say that with confidence. Coming out the gate, starting the show with Cody Rhodes and his announcements. NXT Men's Breakout Tournament. I've seen a couple of the women's matches. I like that format because it almost gives a padding to allowing people who aren't quite ready. You give them a little leadway because it is a breakout tournament. And then we got an announcement for a Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic. Love that. That's absolutely, let's do that again. And then a Cody Rhodes special guest manager for the night. Man, let's start the show on fire. This is the kind of stuff that I wish they would do on the main roster every so often. I am a fan of tournaments. I think they give people purpose. I think that if you're not going to have authority figures, then why not have special guest general managers who get to make and give purpose to matches that otherwise have no purpose? But let's talk about it, right? Roxanne versus Asuka. How smart of a match was that? It introduced so many casual fans to Roxy. People who have never seen her before probably turned on their TV and went, who is that? She just went, move for move with Asuka, who is one of the most technically sound women's wrestlers in all of WWE. And I'll tell you, Roxy, watching that match gave me serious AJ Lee vibes, which I think is a high compliment. Who I probably believe is the actual GOAT of women's wrestling. Fight me if you don't like that. That's just my opinion. But I could see her filling that kind of role on the main roster here very quickly. She held her home against Asuka, and I think she's ready for the main roster. I don't know what's left for Roxy to do on NXT besides maybe just, say goodbye. We got a bar brawl. That was a shit show. That was, and a shit show in the best kind of way. When you can't do blood in a hardcore match, you got to just make it entertaining. You got to take what you have and just make it fun. And what did they do? We got a dart to the hand. We got a bowling ball to a guy that was trapped in a trash can. And we got a pint glass smashed on somebody's face. That match, definition of fun. Loved it. Only thing that would have made that better is if Sheamus would have popped out at some point. We got a Cena and Braun Breaker tease. Dude, talk about a fun WrestleMania match. If Cena sticks around long enough, that's what I want to see at WrestleMania. Not Theory versus Cena. I want Braun Breaker versus John Cena, and I want it to get a little spicy and nasty and a little personal. Because Braun Breaker, I will say, I haven't watched a lot of Braun Breaker. He's better on a microphone than I thought he was. I thought he was a little green. Definitely not. He definitely can play. He's got that commercial ability. Then let's talk about, we got Dragunov versus Mysterio with LA Knight as a special referee. This was one of those just fuck yous to AEW. This was just, hey man, we were already whooping your ass to start the night. Now we're just going to throw gasoline on a fire and watch this bitch burn down. Now, unpopular opinion, hot take possibly. I know a lot of people love Dragunov. I understand why. I can see it. I'm just not sold on his commercial viability. And I get that he has all of the skills in the ring to be a big deal, but as just a complete package, it doesn't translate to me. So I might be missing something. And I know people are going to come tell me, no, we'll go watch this match, go do this. But I don't, as far as a full package goes, I am a casual fan and I go off an eye test, and I don't have this background story with Dragunov that a lot of people have. So when I see him, it is kind of a new experience for me. He doesn't scream superstar. Now, I understand that's the same thing that you could have said about Daniel Bryan. And so maybe there is going to be a moment where it just clicks, where he breaks through and he gets my attention. But I'm just telling you, as far as I can see right now, when I watch NXT, I don't see Dragunov as the next big star in WWE. I see Tiffany Stratton, I see Roxy, I see Braun Breaker, and I see Carmelo Hayes. I don't think at this point in time that Dragunov is on that list yet. You can tell me why I'm wrong, and I'm probably going to argue back. I just don't see it. We got a breakout tournament. Like I said, I think those are cool because you get to watch a match where your expectations are lowered, and you know, like that match felt extremely rushed to me, but it wasn't like I didn't feel critical of it because I knew what it was. It is NXT giving time to two people who probably normally wouldn't have that spot or that spotlight, but it gives them an opportunity to kind of get their feet wet. And I will say this. Lola Vice has star written all over her if she can figure out the X's and O parts of wrestling. That it's kind of the opposite of Dragunov, right? With Dragunov, I go, he's got the X's and O's. I don't know if he's got the presentation yet. With Lola Vice, she's got the presentation. Let's get her figuring out the X's and O's, and I think she will be a big star if she commits, full time. And then the main event. The main event delivered. I think it resonated with every possible kind of wrestling fan, and that is the testament of what WWE and NXT can do. This is the difference in AEW and WWE. It is that WWE can hit every type of wrestling fan. They can reach out to multiple different kinds of audiences. If you're a casual wrestling fan, there was Paul Heyman and John Cena. You saw faces you recognized, and you were able to connect to Braun Breaker and Carmelo Hayes through those faces. If you are a hardcore IWC, there was solid wrestling. Carmelo Hayes is a good wrestler. Braun Breaker is a fun wrestler to watch. So those elements were there. And if you were just one of the, there's just some of these people that are just NXT fans. That's the two biggest stars in your brand. That's the two biggest potential stars in your company having a match that was extremely well put together and extremely fun. And fuck it. Just because we can, we ended the show with The Undertaker. And what a fun finish to the show. What a fun way to have Braun Breaker call himself the badass, and then the biggest badass in WWE come out and put Braun Breaker in his place. What a fun finish to the show. I wonder if those extra 10 minutes on AEW really mattered that much, because once I saw The Undertaker, that was like dessert to a great meal. The NXT show was a beautiful, laid out 5-star cuisine, and The Undertaker was like, here's a piece of cheesecake. I didn't need any more wrestling. I didn't flip over to AEW. I actually, later tonight, I fast forward to see what the main event was of AEW, and my DVR cut off. So I didn't even get to see the end of Edge and the Dinosaur Man. But, here's the thing. The show was fire. And I don't know what the initial numbers are going to be. But I'm going to double down on what I said last week. I'm guessing NXT did over 1 million views this week. I'm guessing possibly over 1.5. That's a big reach, but I think it's possible based on who was on that show this week. And anybody who thought AEW was going to compete tonight, this proved you were out of your fucking mind. You were out of your fucking mind. And I already see the IWC. They're already on Twitter trying to hedge their bets and ease their blows. They're saying, WWE had to bring down these big stars to compete with AEW. What the fuck does that mean? What does that mean? Dynamite is your A show. If you're representing your A show and you can't compete with Asuka, LA Knight, and Dominic Mysterio, what the fuck are you talking about? Just imagine if Dynamite had to go up against a SmackDown that was fully loaded like tonight. Imagine if you had Roman Reigns, John Cena, Undertaker, Drew McIntyre, Seth Rollins, Gunther. You talk about massacre. You talk about slaughter. This was a reminder to all AEW fans of where you guys fall in the wrestling hierarchy. This was a reminder to the IWC, stay in your fucking lane. Edge is not the needle mover that you guys thought you were getting. Jade Cargill is going to be a commercial megastar. AEW is going to have to shift gears. At some point, they're going to have to embrace the niche that they've become, find smaller venues, and just become a true competitor of NXT, because you're not competing with the big boys. Tony Khan, stop talking. Stop talking about WWE like you're in the same universe. You're not the DC Comics to WWE's Marvel Comics. You're more like Archie Comics. You're a joke at this point. You're led by Archie, Veronica, and Jughead. This proved tonight you're not competition. You are going to struggle to compete with NXT on a weekly basis, whether or not they bring down a few of these big stars. You want to know who Batman is? It's Carmelo Hayes. You want to know who Superman is? It's Braun Breaker. It's not MJF. It's not Jon Moxley. It's not Orange Cassidy. It's none of those guys. I'll wait to see what the official numbers are for this week. But unless Tony Khan bought a bunch of Best Buys and turned all the TVs to Dynamite, I'm guessing this is not going to be pretty. All right, so let's talk about a little bit of news before we get out of here. There have been a bevy of reports and rumors surrounding CM Punk since his departure from AEW, and that's created somewhat of a roller coaster saga. Much like in the days before Punk made his return to AEW, reports and rumors have suggested that a deal between Punk and WWE is nearing completion, which would theoretically lead to a debut at Survivor Series. But there's a new report from Fightful Select that puts the brakes on that, with sources high up in WWE stating that any reports of CM Punk signing with WWE are completely false. Wrestling reporting is one of the dumbest things in the world. Like, the journalists are so fucking thirsty for content that they will literally report anything that is fed to them by industry plants. They'll say one thing on Monday and completely contradict it on Tuesday just because they need people to click their shit. But here, let me give you all a little secret. Here's how I usually decipher wrestling news. The initial story that comes out, it always has some truth to it. It wouldn't come out if there wasn't a little bit of, where there's smoke, there's fire. And so the counter story that always follow that is usually the company playing cleanup and trying to knock fans off of the scent of what's really going on. And what that does is the IWC then can latch on to whichever version of that story they like, and that fuels the internet debate. So it's win-win for companies, because basically, WWE goes, look, this isn't happening. They can play dumb. But then the narrative is out there, and they get that pop on social media where fans begin to fight. I want CM Punk. I don't want CM Punk. CM Punk's a cancer. WWE doesn't need him. WWE does need him. But I'm not stupid. I'm not stupid. This conversation has happened. There's no way. It is insane if you think that there has not been a conversation between WWE and CM Punk at this point. Like, the conversation, even if the conversation was as simple as, hey, would you be game to do XYZ if we paid you ABC? It could be that simple. It could be, if we floated this idea to you, how much money are you thinking you need? Or WWE could say, here's our idea and here's what we're willing to pay. But WWE, they don't want this getting out there, and they don't want the fans to start chanting CM Punk and hijacking shows until they know for sure this is locked into place and this is what they want. They don't want their talent to start commenting on this. They don't want people to start, either, picking a side. You'll have some talent who will probably be pro this, and you'll have some talent that'll probably be against it. But look, at the press conference after Fastlane, they instructed the media not to ask questions. That's obviously because they don't want to talk about this right now. And so by doing that, I think that adds fuel to the fire. Now, we can debate all day how that conversation went down, right? I'll debate on the actual interest that WWE has in bringing CM Punk back. There's a possibility they have no interest and they just have to go, hey, we need to test this. What would you do? What would it cost? We'll get back to you. That's 100% a possibility. But the idea that the conversation has not taken place, that's insane. Of course they don't want us as like podcasters and as fans to talk and say CM Punk has signed a contract. We know the surprise is ruined. This is supposed to be a moment. They want that Chicago moment. They want more than likely Seth Rollins standing in the ring holding the World Heavyweight Championship. Music hits to end the show. CM Punk comes out. Place loses their absolute shit. That's what they want. But they don't want that to be known right now. This is a planned surprise. And I believe that when these, it gives me even more of a belief that this is happening when these stories come out that immediately try to contradict things that we already kind of know are probably going on. Second story, Tony Khan took shots on social media at WWE, Vince McMahon, and Triple H before the Tuesday Night War. Look, this is funny. You go look him up if you want to see what he said. I'm not going to go through everything that he said, but Tony Khan was fucking on one this week, trying to promote AEW Dynamite, trying to make sure that his loyal IWC fan base showed up. But this is the kind of thing that reminds me, if you've ever played sports, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you've ever played sports and you're on a team that's undefeated, let's say you're like 10-0, and then you play against a team that's won a couple games and they've hyped themselves up all week that they're going to beat you. And you get out into the game and they score the first point and they go absolutely apeshit. And then they end up getting beat by 60 points. That's what this feels like. It feels like there's a delusion within AEW that they actually can compete. And there's something that scares me. Tony may be losing his mind because you're losing, Tony. You're losing bad. Shut the fuck up. It's okay. It is okay at this point to be humbled if you're Tony Khan. Like, I get it. You choose to play to the IWC audience. You choose to try to hype them up, but it is okay just to shut the fuck up and be humble. You're gloating about your varsity team, Dynamite, playing in a game against basically what is the WWE's freshman team. And the reality is that when the score comes out, you probably lost this game. I would place bets on the fact that you lost this game, but if by some miracle you actually do win and you beat the WWE freshman team that had maybe one varsity player and a couple JV guys on it, it's still nothing to celebrate. If I would leave AEW alone if they would just be quiet. If Tony Khan would just be quiet, I'd have nothing to talk about, but they keep giving me these little jewels to talk about. If the IWC just talked to each other and stopped making these definitive statements about WWE, all would be fine. But every couple of weeks, Tony Khan and the IWC start pounding on their chest, and Daddy Triple H has to remind them, go back to where you belong. Go back to the basement. Go back to the cave. We aren't. Here's the problem. This is what gets me. Tony Khan is the guy who definitively said, we aren't going to take every ex-WWE guy that's available. He said that. Didn't have to say that. I don't even care that you did it, but you did it. And here's the problem. Your show tonight featured almost a WWE guy in every match. Let's go through it. Saraya versus Shida. Saraya is an ex-WWE superstar that you signed. I don't care circumstances. You still signed her. Edge versus the Dinosaur Man. Edge is an ex-WWE superstar. We had Mox versus Phoenix. That was your original plan that you had to audible out of because Mox is hurt. I guess that's what it is. Daniel Bryan versus Swerve Strickland. Oh, that's a twofer. That's a twofer. Those are both WWE guys, buddy. You featured Toni Storm tonight. Where did she come from? Oh, that's right. You picked her up when she left WWE. Where were the pillars at tonight, Tony? Where was Darby Allin? Where was Sammy Guevara? Where was the Jungle Bitch? Oh, that's right. They're all either hurt or suspended because you can't manage to run a safe work environment. What does that say about you, Tony Khan? What does that say about your skills? Notice on a night where you actually had to compete, you really needed to show up and show your best. There was no Young Bucks. There was no Kenny Omega. Those guys are all MIA. They're not featured on the show. You know why? Those guys want plausible deniability, Tony. They don't want to roll with you. They want to be able to come out when those ratings come out, and they want to be able to say, WWE didn't beat us. They beat you. We weren't on the show. That's bullshit. That's not the kind of guys that I like to ride with. But that's all I have for this week. Make sure to watch the Casual Wrestling Podcast every Wednesday night, the Champ or the Chick every Sunday night, and the SmackDown Post Show every Friday night. Hit the like button and share this episode with someone you know. Casual Wrestling merch is available on thenewcasualwrestling.com. Check that out. And until next time, keep it casual, my friends. I'm tapping out.
Step in the ring, if you ready, let's go. Hey, Casual Wrestling Community Show. You already know, talking WWE. Keep it rolling and hosted by Notorious Nerdy D. Dope show that you gon' find. Tune in cause it's online. Hit 'em with a figure 4 leg lock, power driver or clothesline. We bringing that heat like for show.